Hi, everyone, and welcome to Running in Place. I'm Talya Minsberg, Assistant Sports Editor at the New York Times, and I'm thrilled to be here with comedian Michelle Wolf. We are very excited to kick off this discussion, but first, a note on how questions will work. We will be taking questions live from our listeners in about 20 minutes. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And if you're dialed in on the phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. So if you're chosen to ask a question, you'll hear from us when you are on deck. And once you're on air, please give us your name and where you are calling from. Please do note that this event is being recorded and is an audio-only call. And with that, let's get started. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we were chatting a bit before this started, and not only are you a big runner yourself, but you're a big running fan. How'd you get into the sport?
Well, I got into it. I used to run track. I was more of a jumper though. I was definitely more of a jumper. I was definitely a jumper. I did high, long, and triple jump. And then every once in a while, I would run the 400 and the 800 in the relays when my coach either wanted me to die or
forced you.
Yeah, or I remember the first time I ran the 800 was because one of my teammates had missed the bus to the meet, and they needed an extra 800 leg, and they were like, "Well, Michelle, you do it." And I was high jumping. It was during high jump. So I left the high jump apron, ran the 800 for the first time in my life.
Oh my God.
And then went back to high jump and PR'd.
Nice. And that was that.
And it was like the worst thing it was the worst and best thing that could ever happen, because all of a sudden my coach was like, "Oh, great. So not only can you do it, but it makes you a better high jumper for some reason." So now I had no excuse to get out of it.
I still remember when my high school coach put me in the mile for the first time, and I was like, this is awful. And then now I'm a distance runner. So I feel like the coaches know what they're doing.
Yeah, they really do. But yeah, I didn't really start long distance running even after that until my brother got into these kind of ultra things. He started doing rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon and other crazy hikes.
And for those that don't know it, can you explain just how crazy rim to rim to rim is?
Yeah, rim to rim to rim is you start at the south. Oh my gosh, why is my mind blanking? You start at the south rim. Sorry. Rim to rim to rim. I couldn't remember the south rim. That's what's happening in my quarantine.
That's where we are. Yeah.
So you start at the south rim, you go down, cross the river, you go up the north rim, and then you go back down, back cross, and then back up to the south rim all in one day. And even saying it like that doesn't really do it justice, because I don't think a lot of people realize between not only going down the south rim, but going across to the north rim, there's 7 miles. The canyon's 7 miles wide. And so depending on which trail you use, it's either 42 or 46 miles. I've done both of those, but it's 11,000 feet of elevation gain and loss. And it's bonkers. It's an absolutely grueling day. And I've hiked it twice, and both times I felt bad about myself because people pass you running it.
Oh my God.
So no matter, you're doing it, you feel like a badass, and then all of a sudden people run by you and well, I'm just a piece of shit.
And bounding on their toes, I'm sure, with crazy good form.
Yeah, they're just they're making it look like nothing. I know Jim Walmsley trains in the canyon, he's doing it in 6 hours, maybe 6 hours total. I'm doing it in 18,
But you're doing it.
But I'm doing it, but still, I'm comparing myself to these people that I'm well, this isn't making me feel great.
Well, so I feel like as a comedian who spends a lot of time on the road, you said before this started you miss airplanes, which I can only imagine as someone who spends a lot of time traveling. I feel like you have to have a pretty high level of endurance to start with. So how did you decide, like, okay, I'm going to be traveling all the time. I'm also going to not only become this distance runner, but like put myself in 40 some mile crazy levels of elevation races and then a 50 miler. How'd you make that jump?
The first time I did the rim to rim to rim, I got in this mental place I'd never been in before, which was it was during like heading back toward the South Rim, doing the flat 7 miles between the two inclines. And it was this, there's a part of the trail that almost looks like one of those those old car racing video games where like it just looks like the same screen over and over again. Like you kept going around these bends and it just was the same thing over and over again. And I remember getting so angry, like, but angry and also like determined at the same time. I was just like, I am so mad that this is still happening. That it got me in this weird mental place where I was like, I'm going to finish this. I'm so mad, but I'm going to finish this. And I had never felt that type of determination before. Mm-hmm. And I really liked it. I really liked that angry mental, like just like I'd never gotten to that deep determination. And after that, I knew I was going to get into ultras. I was like, I got to find that mental space again.
Wow. And
yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like it was about a week, but this is like only superhuman levels of endurance. And also, just to be clear, like anything over a marathon, so marathon is 26.2 miles, an ultra is anything more than that. And you've done like some of the hardest, but I'm completely in awe of the fact that it was 2018, you did the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you launched a TV show, and then you casually did a 50 miler. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was less than a week after the Correspondents' Dinner. The Correspondents' Dinner was on it was on a Saturday, I guess, right? It was on a Saturday night. I did the ultra on the next Friday. So I flew out Utah on Thursday, and we drove to Bonneville where the race was, and we did that Friday morning.
What was that week like? What was that race like?
It was honestly, it was so nice because during the race, like I'm not checking my phone. Mm-hmm. I'm just like determined to finish this. The longest I had done before that, I hadn't done a training run that was any longer than a marathon. So like I did not know if I could do 50 miles. I'd mm-hmm. never done that before. Even the rim to rim to rims were 42 and 46. So like, and I had done, close to marathons in training, but I just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of it. Like just being like, can I do this? Can I physically complete this task? And so like being disconnected kind of from society out in the middle of nowhere in Utah, and like literally just me versus myself. Mm-hmm. And that was like, amidst all the chaos that had been going on and how busy everything was in my life, it was such a nice break just for like, the 12 hours that I was doing it, where I was just like, nothing else matters right now except finishing this.
Mm-hmm. And was it as hard as you expected? Or what was it like you expected at all? I've never done anything more than a marathon, so I can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I anytime I go into any of these things, I know I'm like, okay, today's gonna suck. Like I'm like, yeah. The day's gonna suck. It's gonna be a sucky day, but you can get through a day. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I always I go into these types of events. But the first like, it was what I expected it to be. I actually wasn't as like, I would get to the aid stations, and for anyone that doesn't know, during ultra marathons, they'll have aid stations every 6 to 10 miles where you can stop, get refill your water. They'll have like snacks there, anything from like watermelon gummies, and then also like sometimes like peanut butter and jellies, quesadillas, whatever they happen to be making.
Like a
just
buffet.
to kind of, yeah, to refuel. And, we'd stop at aid stations. All I wanted was watermelon. The only thing I wanted was watermelon. I think probably because I was dehydrated, but also they had really good watermelon. It tasted really good,
Yeah.
And but I do remember mile 32 to 42. I got to mile 32. There was an aid station there, and then there was a hill right after that aid station, and it was sand. And I was so mad that the one hill, because I picked the flattest race I could find. I picked the flattest ultra I could find because I do most of my training in cities and there's not a lot of hills. I'm always on the road, and I try to find a route. Normally it's by water, and there's just very few hills that I can train on. And so I wanted to do the flattest ultra I could find. And there was one hill, and it was right after the 32-mile mark, and it was sand. And I was so mad because every step you went up, you slipped back a little bit. We've all been in sand before. I was so angry. And mile 32 to mile 42, I wanted to die. And I remember we got through the hill, and a couple more miles after, we stopped at another aid station. And the people that were running the aid station, their kids were there. And their kids were there. They were running and playing and having a good time. And I've never been so angry at children before in my life. Where I was like, how dare you enjoy life right now?
Do you have any idea what I'm going through?
I was so I think about that all the time. I was like, they were just running. They were just being kids having a good time. And I was so angry at them. I was like, how dare you have fun and laugh? I felt like Mrs. Trunchbull or whatever her name is from Matilda, where I was just like, I wanted to shove the children.
I hope you didn't, or maybe that you did and got
I did not. I also did not have
good.
the energy to shove children, thankfully. But after that, mile 42 to 50, I was just like, all right, you're going to finish it. You're going to finish it. That was really all that was important after that. But those 10 miles were really they were dark. They were dark, dark miles.
Man, I feel like it can be, I can only imagine the kind of mental games you play to get through each mile in those.
Yeah.
moments.
And my brother was with me. Both my brothers did that ultra. We do a lot of them together. They've done way more than I have. They live out in Arizona. So they they have there's a lot of ultra marathoning out there in general. They do a lot with the Aravapa, the Aravapa races. And it's, they're way more badass than I am. But they both did it with me. And my one brother kind of took off in the beginning because he felt good. And my other brother, the deal was, he was like, I'm staying with you the whole race. It's your first one. I'm getting you through it. Because I've paced him on a couple ultras before. I've done either the first half or the second half with him, and he was like, I'm getting you through this one. And he was there the whole time. He was by my side the entire time, and he anytime I was having any sort of mental trouble or physical trouble, he was like, nope, we're finishing. There wasn't a question in his mind that he wasn't gonna get me to the end.
That's great. And I imagine there were some conversations where he had to be it was a sibling dynamic. I mean, I run with my sister a fair amount, and we say things to each other when one of us are struggling that you can kind of only say to siblings in those moments.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it was, I knew I wasn't going to give up either. I knew I knew from the beginning, I was like, I'm going to finish this, even if even if it's after the two things I didn't want to run out of time. I didn't want to, there's a cutoff. I didn't want to run out of time, and I didn't want to be last. Those were my two things. But even during it, I was like, I'm just going to finish it, I'm not giving up. So he never had to really do any of that, heavy lifting, but there were times when he was, he would gently tease or, like be like, come on, we're going, we gotta go now, get off your ass.
Yeah.
That kind of fun stuff.
And can you tell us a bit about training on the road? Because I think one thing a lot of people miss right now is, of course, traveling and also running in new places. I know I live in Brooklyn and I love running here, but it's such a fun thing to go to a new city and discover it through running. So I would love to hear about some of your long training runs while on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually you go to, I don't know, I'm on the road maybe 40 weeks a year. So I go to a lot of different cities, and I'm at the point now where I have a run that I do in almost every major city in the United States. And
Wow.
like also like a couple places in the UK where I'm like, oh, this is the run I love in England, this or in London. This is the run I love in Manchester. This is the run I love in Dublin. Like Dublin has this place called Phoenix Park, and it's this huge park, and it's so fun to run, and it's beautiful. There's like reindeer there.
Cool.
And it's just really nice. It's so fun to run there. And then like every major city in the US, like I have, aside from Cleveland, I hate running in Cleveland, but that's only because I got chased once.
Oh no.
When I was running there, Cleveland and Sacramento, those are the two cities I don't like to run in. And in Cleveland, I got chased by a man. He was, in all fairness, I did take a wrong turn, and I ended up in not a great section of town. But he chased me. I got away. It was fine. In Sacramento, I got chased by a dog. There's like a large homeless population in Sacramento, and along the river, there is a lot of homeless people that have those pit bulls. And I know people are going to be like, don't blame it on the dog. But I'm not blaming the dog. I'm just saying a pit bull is a much scarier dog to get chased by than a chihuahua.
Yes.
Like
different level of fear.
Yeah. And this guy who, I don't think I think he was on quite a bit of drugs, had let go of the leash, and the dog chased after me. And I didn't even realize it was chasing me until I heard him calling after the dog. And I looked back, and he was at my legs, and I just completely froze. But then after that, I was like, all right, only inside running in Sacramento now, and Cleveland after both of those incidences. But other than that, I've enjoyed running in every other place I've been. Like we were talking about Minneapolis. I love running in Minnesota. Yes. I love running in Minneapolis. There's like around the bridges, around the Mississippi, or Portland. There's a great run in Portland. Seattle has a beautiful run you can do. It's just like it's so nice. Almost every city has a river that goes through it, and almost every river has a path that's next to it. So like you get to see the city. You're by water. It just like it's really nice. It's like it's a beautiful way to kind of experience a town. It's also a way to see where they sell heroin. Almost always under a bridge somewhere. Providence has a beautiful run that I love. There's so many, like, I remember one time I was in Salt Lake City. They have, of course, there's like a lot of great running there, but then I purposefully was like, oh, I found this hike that I could do. It was called Grandeur Peak. It was so beautiful. And I couldn't believe that, like, it was like a 20-minute car ride outside of Salt Lake. And then I got to do this amazing hike with these beautiful views. And then I went back to the city and did a show that night. And I was like, how did I get so lucky to combine the two things that I love? And I get to do them every weekend, or at least I used to. I mean, that's what it's one of the things I can't wait to get back to. Like I get to do comedy and run. And then that's really all I have to do during the day. Those two things, the two things I love the most in the world, I get to do every day.
And that's an amazing place to be. Do you feel that one helps the other? Do you feel like they supplement each other in any interesting ways?
For sure. Like, I mean, running has given me it's just made me mentally tougher. Like I think a lot of it actually goes back to me for high jump, which is when you're a high jumping, it doesn't matter if you won, you could beat everybody, but they still raise the bar until you get out.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have your best jump of your entire life, you could PR, but they still raise the bar and you always get out on a fail, which I know seems kind of bleak, but in the scheme of life, it's a good thing because you're like, no matter how good you do, you always know there's another step you can take.
Mm-hmm.
You can always advance yourself. You know, like there's always the next thing to work to. And I think that was a really good it was a really good gauge for how to live life where it's like, yeah, you did your best and you can celebrate that, but also there's another one. Go get after that. And that's helped me in life, in
Mm-hmm.
comedy, especially, you know, like you tape a special, you know, and then you're like, all right, good job. Next one, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
running, if I'm stuck on something, there's been plenty of times when like I've been like, oh, I can't figure out this joke. And I'll literally think about the joke on the run. I'll focus on it on the run. And 9 out of 10 times I'll figure it out while I'm running. I think of
Oh, that's
ideas when
cool.
I run. It just unlocks like, you know, running can be very meditative, but it can also let your brain kind of just like relax and go to where it needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely helped me figure out jokes and figure out, just unlock things that I hadn't been able to think of while I was just sitting staring at my computer.
Mm-hmm. One of my
Or, you know,
editors.
also sometimes I'll be stuck or frustrated and I'll go out for like, you know, I'll go for like a couple hard miles, you know, like running pretty fast and,
Mm-hmm.
or at least fast for me. Um,
All
and
relative.
yeah. and, and, you know, when you're running really fast and all you're concentrating on is like breathing and keeping going, uh, after you're done with that, then sometimes you're like, oh yeah, okay, now I figured it out because I wasn't using my brain for anything except running for a minute.
Mm-hmm. That's so real. My editor has always said if you are getting stuck writing, just go running and then come back at it.
Yeah, yeah. It's really like I find it unbelievably beneficial.
And before we open it up to reader questions, I would love to hear. I mean, the question "How are you right now?" feels a little heavy and insufficient in a way. But where are you? How are you holding up? You're not able to do. You're not able to be on the road, but you're still running. You're still writing. What is your current state?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to be in the country, so I I get to run every day. There's not a lot of people around, and you know, I'm in a very knock on wood, low affected area,
Mm-hmm.
and so I get to run every day. There's beautiful bike paths around me that are just like, you know, tree lined. Spring is here, everything's blooming, it smells good, you know, like I understand how fortunate I am to be in a place where I get to experience all these things, and also so glad that it's finally broke and now it is spring slash summer. It was a real
Mm-hmm.
slog. Like anytime the weather teases you, you know, like it's cold all winter. You're bundled up, and then you get those first like glimpses of spring where you can run in like a t-shirt, and then going back from
Uh-huh.
running in a t-shirt to having to run in like a jacket again feels like the worst torture. Where I'm like, no, I
Oh, it's
can't go
brutal.
back. I hate it. I hate it. So now we're finally, you know, it's warmed up, and I'm telling you, right, running's really keeping me, as it always does, but especially now, keeping me sane. You know, like there isn't a lot you can do right now. I think a lot of us are
Mm-hmm.
sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs, waiting to see what's going to happen. You know, like we have such little control of what's going on right now that the one thing you can do if you're in a space that allows for it is you can go out and run. And you have, you know, it's one of the things I love about running is like, it's that you have control over it. Um, it's like a little bit of freedom. It's getting your mind right, keeping your body right, appreciating what your body can do, appreciating your health. all that stuff where, you know, it continues to be, even though I can't do comedy right now, I can run, and it continues to be the thing that keeps me sane and happy.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear it. And we will now open it up to questions. Just a reminder of how this is going to work. So if you have a question, you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And if you're on the phone, hit *9. That will raise your hand. If you're chosen, you'll hear from us when you're on deck. And then once you're on air, please give us your name and where you are calling from. Bill, you are on deck. Would love to hear your question.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Oh, Michelle, just to let you know, I'm an 85-year-old fan. You speak of,
nice to meet you.
you speak of your comedy and your running separately. You use the word "and." I know you from the Daily Show. Have you infused such an important part of your life in your comedy?
Yeah, I actually, you know, it's hard to joke about running. It's even hard to talk about running, you know, to people that aren't runners, because I think when you start talking about running to people who aren't runners, they hear like, you're like, I love running. And I think they hear like, oh, you think you're better than me? Because you do that, or, you know, like, so it's hard to put running into jokes. I do have one from my my first HBO special where I talk about how I run, but I have no idea what I'm training for. Like, the only way running is going to help me, you know, is if someone tries to attack me and chase me at a slow to moderate pace. And I've thought about that actually a lot during this pandemic, because I'm like, I'm still running, but I'm like, well, I guess this would help if the world ends. I guess this would help if I needed to run away from someone slowly. If somehow this were the apocalypse and I could run slowly from it, I'd be good. Other than that, I'm still doomed. I have no new skills.
I did actually have this realization where I was like, if I need to get home to my family in Minnesota, like, look, I've always wanted to do an ultra marathon. Like, sure, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if I needed to go to another town or city, I could get there.
There you go. Thank you for that question. And we have Susan up next.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Awesome, great. My name is Susan Galbraith. I'm from Kirkland, Washington. I'm also a big fan. Love your stand-up, and I want to say, I love your sneakers. You always have great high-heeled sneakers. I have two quick questions. Two quick questions. What's your cross-training plan that you do, and what's your next goal?
I actually do, and I've been doing it the last about year and a half. I've really gotten into Pilates. I absolutely love it. I think it's really, I mean, a lot of Pilates there's a lot of core work, but it's also really helped with my hamstrings and my stretching. I hate stretching, but Pilates, you kind of just do it while you're working out, which is the best and really only way that I ever get it done. I'm very bad in that regard. But yeah, I think Pilates is a great supplement to running. I miss it. I really miss Pilates right now. I've tried to do some at-home stuff, but like being on the machine in the room, I don't think there's really any substitute for that. But I think it helped immensely with my running and just my overall, health of my body. I think it's really been beneficial.
Awesome, thank you so much. And we have Joanna up next. So Joanna, if you see this, and by which I mean hear this, you should be able to ask your question now and we'll be able to hear you.
Hi, this is Joanna.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so surprised I actually got on. Thank you. I was wondering if you are Michelle. Thank you so much. I love your comedy. I discovered you one night when I couldn't sleep, and I turned on the TV at like 3 a.m. and found one of your specials, and I had to have it on mute because my husband was nearby, and so I didn't hear your voice, but I got it on closed caption, and I was laughing out loud, even without hearing your voice.
Oh,
So there's something. Your comedy is perfect for me. My question is, will you be doing any kind of remote performances? You said you're not able to do comedy now, but will you be doing anything that we'll be able to hook into in some kind of remote way?
I think it depends on how long this lasts. I don't have any intention of doing anything like on a Zoom or I feel like an audience and like hearing an audience is so integral to comedy that doing it without one, just it feels wrong a little bit for me. So I think I won't do anything virtual that where you can't, have an audience. But I'm trying to release a lot of stuff on my Instagram, old clips, old videos, things that I've content that I did years ago that people may have never seen, just so they do have something to watch. I have two web series from I think like 2015. It feels like it's been years, that are both on YouTube, Now Hiring and Used People. So if you're, looking for content that you maybe haven't seen before of me, you can find that on YouTube. But I don't plan on doing anything live until we can do it in front of people again. Unless this goes on for a lot longer than I'm planning, then I might I might have to break down to it.
Let's so hope it's sooner rather than later.
I know, I really hope so.
Absolutely. And Serena, you are up next, so you should get a little alert that you can speak and we'll hear you.
Oh, hi. Yes, my name is Serena, and I'm calling from Boston, Mass. And I have really appreciated I've really appreciated being able to go running now that, we can't go to our gyms, and it's just been such a release, like what you were saying, and just really grateful that I can do that. But I have a question about masks. Maybe you I tuned in a few minutes late. Did you talk about wearing a mask while running and how hard it is? And if you have any good ideas, or if anybody out there has any good ideas of like the best kind of a mask to wear? I'm really self-conscious about, if I take it off, I know you really need to have it on when you're running. So I would love some tips.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this before we started, but I'm out in the country, so like I'm not wearing a mask, but it's only because there's no one around. And like I'm not running into people on my runs. And so I'm very lucky that I can do that. I don't know how people are running in masks. Even when I go to the store, I'm, and I have a mask on, I think it's tough. So if you're doing it, good for you. I especially as it gets warmer, I'm not sure what the solution is. But maybe, honestly, maybe it'll help with like, a little bit of like fake altitude training where you're not getting the oxygen, maybe 100% that you need. And maybe it's actually going to, in the long run, make you a better runner. If we're going to try to be like optimistic about it. But other than that, I don't really have any good suggestions or tips.
It is. I've actually heard that altitude thing from a few people, that it's like low budget altitude training. So that is one way to twist it around in your mind.
Yeah, if that helps you get through it, maybe. But also just, be kind to yourself too. Like if it makes you run slower or it makes you have to stop more, do that. But like, you're wearing a mask, you're doing it for the greater good. So just be kind to yourself in terms of like what you need to do to get through that.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I would add that is interesting, and I myself will be looking into, is I do know that some athletic companies are trying to figure out what materials are a little less hot, but also still safe. So I would keep an eye on running stores who, this is such a weird sentence, but who may be selling masks in the near future. We are all trying to figure out how to run safely. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And up next we have Michaela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. My name is Michaela. I'm calling in from Carefree, Arizona. I'm a
Carefree, my
cross-country
brother
shorter
lives
distance
there.
runner. No way! That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so inspired by hearing about your long distance running. And so I decided to run my first marathon in Chicago in October. And I'm a little daunted by the idea of just running for hours in these longer training runs. I was wondering how you keep those interesting, and if you run with music or podcast or group in ways that I could maybe not get too bored on those long runs.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely run with music almost all the time. It's rare that I don't have music on. The only time I won't have music on is if I'm running with other people, which I honestly don't do that often. I really only run with other people if I'm with my brothers. But yeah, music, one of my favorite things to do is I'll listen to music. I'll figure out a playlist of music that I haven't heard in a really long time. So like every song I'm like, oh, right, I forgot how much I love this song, and then it's kind of like you just go through song by song and you're like, oh, right, this one, and that one, that keeps me going a lot. I also, especially for ultras, I won't go out for distance. I'll be like, all right, I remember when I was training, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to run for 5 hours. And, I wasn't concerned about like how far I went. I just knew I was going to be out for 5 hours. And, I did a thing where I would run for 5 miles and then I'd walk the rest of the hour. And, I'm not going fast on these long runs. It was like between like 9 and 10 minute, 11-minute miles sometimes. And so, you get to you run 5 miles, you're at 50 some minutes, and then I'd walk the rest of the hour. And that kind of helped me break up the run, where it was like, 5 miles and then a little walking reward. Sometimes I talk on the phone when I run, if I'm gonna one of these really long ultra runs. And yeah, I mean, like the more you do longer runs, I think the more your brain kind of adapts to being out that long. And they kind of end up, the more you do it, they feel shorter. Like yesterday I was out for like an hour and a half and it didn't feel like an hour and a half. It just felt like I was listening to music for a while. And yeah, I mean, whatever you can do to kind of distract yourself from the time, I think is good.
And good luck in Chicago. That's awesome. It's a
Yeah,
really
good luck in
fun
Chicago.
race.
And also, Chicago is one of my favorite places to run. I love running around that lake. I absolutely love Chicago. It's such a great place.
That's awesome. Enjoy. And we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions. And next up is Joe. Maybe up next is Joe. Joe, if you see a thing that says you are allowed, that you have been unmuted, we would love to hear your question. Okay, so let's shift. Sorry about that,
Sorry.
Joe. We're going to shift to, oh, are you there?
I'm here. Hello,
Great.
Talia. Hello, Michelle. Sorry,
Hello.
technology issues. Hello.
No, you're all good.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing what you're doing. It's awesome. And I think that Michelle's line that I wanted to shove the children is the line of the day. I'm a coach and a distance runner myself, and you have those moments when you don't do something awful,
Yeah,
but you
I'm
have those
sure.
awful thoughts about things you want to do. So I wanted to know if you have any interest in the virtual races that are popping up. It's probably a good comedy sketch that people are starting to be into virtual races where you can just go out and do these things that we used to do with thousands of people, and now people are just going and doing it on their own. But do you have any interest in doing any of those?
Yeah, I actually, and I was sad I didn't hear about it until later, but the guy that does the Barclay Marathon, first of all, if you haven't seen that documentary on Netflix, there's the Barclay Marathon documentary is so good. That guy is a crazy person who puts on these just crazy races. It's so like I mean crazy in a good way. He puts on these races out in Tennessee, but he was doing a virtual run. I think it was like 1,000 kilometers maybe throughout the month of it was either May or April. And yeah, I'd actually be down to do something like that. I wouldn't mind doing some sort of virtual race. And like just doing if we're all like, hey, today we're all gonna do 50K, then yeah, let's do it. I'd be down for that. The only thing that stinks about the virtual races is that my favorite thing about these races is the aid stations. I love the aid stations. They make me so happy. The people that work there are so cheery, except for the children. But like, like that's the only thing about the virtual races where it's just like, well, where do I stop and get my water? Where do I refuel? Do I have to put it all on my back? Do I make a loop where I get to be back at the house every, whatever it is, 10 miles or so? That's the only thing about the virtual races. Like, you really appreciate the support that live races have. And also, like, there's an added level of mental toughness. There's no one else around you to push you. There's not that community. So like, you got to, do it yourself. So that aspect of it actually kind of excites me. So if anyone has like a virtual race that they're excited about or want thinks would be fun to do, send it my way. I'm in it. I'd be down to do one.
I like the idea of recruiting a handful of friends to set up like a really extraordinary aid station that's just for you also. Yeah. That's a good challenge. And final question, we will hear from Christina.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, this is Chris from Manhattan. Just my quick question is, how did you make the transition from, being a jumper and then a 400 and 800 runner to something longer? I was just making a transition from sort of like a 5K runner, and I had signed up for the Brooklyn Half in New York City, and that was canceled. And I'm getting great at running short distances, but my brain wants to train for longer distances. But how did you go from shorter to really the ultra marathons? So I'm just curious how that evolved for you.
That's a great question. I had to wrap my brain around going slower. So I was so used to doing, my training runs, as a jumper, you do like a mile warm up, maybe like, you do like 200, 300, 400 repeats maybe, and then like a mile or two cool down. Like, I wasn't used to running long in general, like I might do a 5K here and there, but every time I ran, I thought you had to run fast. So when I really got into these longer distances, I had to convince myself that it was okay to go slow. So what I did, instead of focusing on my pace, I did the Mafferton, Dr. Mafferton, what is it? It's the doctor who you base your running on your heart rate. So there's this theory, if you run at, this like threshold heart rate, which, there's zones of heart rate. I think it's like the zone 3, which for me was between like 147 beats per minute to like 157 beats per minute. If you can stay within that heart rate over a period of time, you'll be able to run faster at that same heart rate. Now, for me in the beginning to stay at like one, in that range, I had to run really slow. I was doing 11, even 12-minute miles to stay within that heart rate. And that really helped me to know I was focused on the heart rate rather than the time. Because in my head, I was doing, like, if I had been like, I'm doing 12-minute miles, I would have been mad at myself for going that slow. But because I was trying to stay with that heart rate, I was like, no, it's not about time, it's about heart rate. So that really helped me reconcile the fact that you're allowed to run slow. That was one of the biggest things I had to get over. It wasn't about my pace. It was about just continuing to move. So like just wrapping my brain around slower mile times, it was easier for me to do that based on heart rate rather than actually trying to get to a time. So, and it's just one of those things where it's like, as soon as you can allow yourself to not think you have to go fast, like that was my biggest hurdle, was like, I just have to keep moving. It doesn't matter about time, it just matters about keeping moving. So as soon as I let myself go slower, I was able to go longer. It seems, even hearing that out loud, I'm like, that seems so logical, but it was really hard for me to wrap my brain around.
Mm-hmm. And hey, just keep moving. What a good note to end on for all of us sitting at home in quarantine. Just pace doesn't matter.
One foot in front of the other, just keep moving. I mean, to me, that's like it's one of the reasons I love running. It's such a great allegory for life. Just keep moving, one foot in front of the other. Like we are so blessed to have bodies that allow us to do this. I think about that every time I run, how thankful I am for my body that allows me to do this.
That's great. And that is a perfect note for us to end on today. Thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. We're so glad that you were able to do so. And thank you everyone for listening in. This event is a part of a larger series of digital events that the New York Times is producing to help readers understand and navigate the world we find ourselves into today. Next up on Sunday, tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll have Simon Critchley, the series moderator of The Stone, with New York Times opinion editor Peter Catapano as they speak with special guest Maria Bamford on coping with hardship with help of humor. You can see our full slate of digital events and RSVP at timesevent.nytimes.com. Thank you so much to our subscribers. You make our work possible. We really look forward to speaking with you all again. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, bye.